Hello, and welcome to English Podcast with Missy. Here we learn English for real life. Clear, slow, and simple. Let's learn English together. Are you ready? Let's begin. Hi, friends. Welcome back to our quiet little corner for English and stories. It's Missy again. And today, I want to share something personal. A story that still feels a little tender, but one that changed the way I see success and failure. We often hear stories about winning, about dreams coming true and everything going perfectly. But real life isn't always like that, is it? Sometimes we fall. Sometimes we make mistakes. And sometimes, that's exactly when we learn the most. So today's story is about a time I failed and how that failure helped me grow. It all started a few years ago when I was working for a small education company. I had been there for about a year. I was still learning, still finding my rhythm, still trying to prove myself. Then one quiet afternoon, my manager called me into her office. She smiled and said, "We're starting a new learning project. It's small, but important. I think you'd be a good person to lead it." I froze. Me? Lead a project? Two feelings hit me at the same time: excitement and fear. A part of me felt proud and ready. But another part whispered, "What if you fail?" Still, I smiled and said, "Yes, I'd love to try." Inside, my heart was racing. My hands felt shaky. But I didn't want to say no. I didn't want to miss the chance to grow. At that moment, I told myself, this is my opportunity. I can't waste it. At first, I was full of energy. This was my first real chance to lead something, and I wanted to make it perfect. I stayed late after work, brainstorming ideas and organizing plans. My notebook was full of sketches, and my desk was covered in sticky notes. I created colorful charts and timelines, downloaded new apps, and made detailed checklists. Everything looked perfect, at least on paper. But under all that effort, something was missing. I didn't ask for feedback. Not once. I didn't check with the team to see what they thought. Why? Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I asked too many questions, people would think I wasn't capable. Afraid that my manager would regret giving me the project. So I decided to do everything myself. I'll figure it out, I told myself. I can handle it. But that was my first mistake. Soon I was staying later and later each night. I skipped my evening walks. I stopped resting. If one slide didn't look perfect, I would spend an hour fixing it. I was trying to control every small detail, but I was losing sight of what really mattered: the people, the communication, the teamwork. I wasn't leading anymore. I was isolating myself. And slowly, the pressure started to build. The problem started quietly. Small things at first. One person misunderstood their task and sent me the wrong version of a lesson. Another missed a deadline. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. I thought, it's okay. I'll fix it later. I told myself they must be busy. I didn't want to sound demanding. But the truth was, I was avoiding the hard conversations. I was afraid to admit I was struggling. I didn't want anyone to see I was losing control. So instead of asking for help, I smiled and said everything was fine. But inside, I was exhausted. As the deadline got closer, things began to fall apart. Important details slipped through the cracks. Team members became confused about their roles. And I just kept pretending it was all okay. One evening, just a few days before the launch, I stayed late in the office. The windows were dark, the building silent. Papers were everywhere. Drafts, notes, and lists I hadn't finished. I sat there, staring at my laptop screen, unable to focus. That's when the thoughts came rushing in. I should have asked for help. I could have done this differently. Why didn't I speak up sooner? I realized I had reached my limit, but I still kept pretending I hadn't. And that, I think, was the hardest part. The next morning, we launched the project. I arrived early, hoping everything would somehow fall into place. I checked all the links and reread the materials. Technically, everything worked. The files uploaded. The lessons opened. But it didn't feel like a success. Not to me. Some lessons were unclear. One section had broken formatting. Another had spelling mistakes I thought I had already fixed. We received a few polite comments from clients, and one message that hit me like a punch. It said, "We appreciate the effort, but this version feels rushed. Some parts are hard to follow." That was it. Just a short message. But it was enough to make my stomach twist. I felt embarrassed, disappointed, and ashamed. Not because of the feedback, but because I knew it was true. At home, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every moment in my head, every mistake, every decision I hadn't made. I blamed myself for everything. Even though no one else did, I felt like I had let everyone down. A few days later, my manager asked me to come by her office. She said, "Just a quick chat." But my heart dropped. I expected a list of my mistakes, maybe even a warning. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm not meant to lead anything again. But she didn't look angry. She looked calm, kind even. She asked softly, "What do you think happened?" At first, I couldn't speak. Then, slowly, I told her everything. How I had tried to do everything on my own. How I was afraid to ask for help. How I wanted to prove I could handle it all. She listened quietly without interrupting. When I finished, she paused and said something I'll never forget. "You didn't fail. You just learned a hard lesson. You care. And that matters." Her words sank in. I felt the pressure in my chest loosen. For the first time, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt human and seen. That moment changed me. It helped me understand that failure isn't the end. It's part of the path. It's not something to hide from or be ashamed of. Failure is where growth begins. Since then, I've led other projects with better results. But more importantly, with better communication. Now I ask questions early. I check in with people often. I speak up when I'm unsure, even if it feels uncomfortable. And I remind myself again and again, you don't have to be perfect to be strong. You just have to be open, honest, and willing to learn. Failures don't define us. They teach us. They shape us. And in their own quiet way, they make us stronger. In this story, we used two tenses, past simple and past perfect. I've already talked with you many times about past simple. Past simple. It's the tense we use for finished actions in the past, like I worked or I tried. But today, I want to focus on past perfect, a special past tense we use when talking about something that happened before another past event. How do we form past perfect? Past perfect is formed with subject plus had plus past participle. Examples. I had never led a project before. This happened before I was asked to lead. I had spent hours planning. This happened before I realized I needed help. When do we use past perfect? We use it to show the order of two past events, to say which one happened first. If you talk about two things in the past, use past perfect for the one that happened earlier. Thank you for spending this time with me. I know today's story was a little heavier, but I hope it reminded you that failure isn't something to fear. If you've ever felt like you messed up or fell short, you're not alone. We're all learning. And sometimes our greatest lessons come from the moments we wish we could redo. If this story connected with you, share your own experience. Let's keep learning, together. Take care of yourself, my friends. See you next time.